My name's Tom Ross, and welcome to the Honest Entrepreneur Show. If you tuned in for episode 1, you would have heard me talk all about hustle culture and how hustling my face off let me get my company off the ground and build the thing which I'm actually so proud of in this world. However, I think it's so important to show the other side of the coin. And in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the downsides of hustle culture. I'm going to be talking about serious burnout, mental and physical health, and all of the flip side of the adrenaline fueled high that hustle can bring. Right around, I think it was nearly a year in to Design Cuts, I'd been riding this wave of hustle and I'd been feeling great. In fact, I felt unstoppable. I remember being so confused when people around me said things like, you might burn out, or, there's some red flags here that you might want to look out for. And I just dismissed it out of hand. I remember as well, some of my business mentors, who I did have a lot of respect for, were preaching things like only aim to get one big project or one thing done each day. That's the key to productivity. And I was thinking, oh, screw you guys. I'm getting 15 to 20 things done every day and prolifically tearing through them without fail. So I was kind of dismissing a lot of the warning signs, but sure enough, turns out those people had more experience and they knew a lot better than me what was down the line. I remember I started feeling burnt out. So my concentration started to go. I started to get increasingly tired and sluggish. And I know in episode 1, I talked about the movie Limitless, which is a great movie. And in that movie, they of course get the inevitable lull. So they're riding the high of the brain pill, which Bradley Cooper takes, but then his health starts going and the whole thing starts to crumble. And that is honestly how it felt at the time. I felt like I'd been so unstoppable and suddenly chinks started appearing in the armor. And I remember thinking, God, like, what the hell is happening to me? What's going on here? The burnout just started building and building and building until I crashed, and I crashed very hard. I think I needed like a full day or two to almost go comatose because I couldn't really do anything. And then I picked myself up and I jumped straight back into hustling. I thought, well, that was weird, but I got my rest now, so I'm going to get back into it. But then what started to happen was I started to get that more and more. So I could push through that wall and I could hustle. But whereas before I could make it 18 months, suddenly I could only make it 6. And then the same thing would happen again. And then before I knew it, I was burning out every 3 months, and then every month, and then every couple of weeks, and then every week. And suddenly I felt burnt out all the time. And burnout is a really, really horrible thing. It makes you feel lethargic. It makes you almost feel like when you have a cold or something and you're sick and your brain just doesn't work and you can't do anything. And it was so frustrating because the business was still growing. Everything was still going great. I just couldn't be pushing it quite as hard as I had been. This actually forced me to start hiring our first staff and essentially get some help, which was ultimately a sensible thing. But I could feel internally something really wasn't right. And if you remember in episode 1, I mentioned how I'd also been powerlifting a lot. So I've been running up to the gym above our office, strapping on a weightlifting belt, and then squatting like 100 kg after doing an 18-hour day kind of thing. So mentally and physically, I started to break. And I remember I started to just get this really bad cough and started to feel quite sick on top of the burnout. And things really started to get quite worrying. And it actually got to the point where every morning I'd be waking up and physically being sick in the toilet for like 2 hours every morning, and then having to get up and go into work after that and then work a full day. I just started getting sicker and sicker. So suddenly, not only that, but then I'd drive to work and I'd have to pull over the car and actually be sick out onto the road. And it was disgusting. I remember doing this in the middle of a busy lane of traffic and people honking at me. So it happened again a few weeks later. And then I had to pull into an office complex and people looked at me like I was on drugs or like I was hungover or something, because suddenly I'm like vomiting in their corporate car park. And the whole thing was literally very messy. Turns out that I developed a hiatus hernia, which, if you don't know, is basically where your stomach is kind of slid up into your esophagus. It's all very horrible and not particularly nice. But my doctor ended up telling me that it was symptomatic of a tremendous amount of stress that I'd been putting myself under. So it was probably a combination of doing the powerlifting and just working myself through and beyond burnout. What this meant was that I had to undergo major stomach surgery and had a pretty rough recovery, to say the least. So I remember having the surgery and thinking, oh, I'll be back on my feet in a week or two. Luckily, at this point, we had a team. I thought things would feel quite sustainable. And sure enough, after 8 days or something, I was back in the office and I was raring to go. But as much as my mind wanted to carry me forward and I had all these ideas and I wanted to push the company, it was like my body was just a dead weight kind of dragging behind me. And my body would literally not let me do what my mind wanted to. So I'd be there trying to give a speech to the team and suddenly I'd start, almost slurring my words and just couldn't push through and get that out. I physically didn't have the energy. And it got so bad that I would be sat at my desk and I would be unable to stand up from my desk. I'd be kind of shaking like an 80-year-old man and have to kind of just like hobble to the kitchen to get a glass of water. And I started to physically and mentally almost lose sight of who I was because I got that sick. I just could not operate. And this is very, very tough because obviously I wanted to be pushing the company, but I wanted to be doing the best job looking after my team and building a great culture and all those kind of things. And that was nigh on impossible because when you're feeling that sick, you can barely look after yourself, let alone everyone around you. Because it had been stomach surgery, it also meant that I'd try and do something normal like eat lunch. And I'd suddenly be clutching my stomach and just be curled up on the sofa at work in agony with my team asking if I was okay and looking concerned. It was really, really horrible. And being quite a naturally slim guy, I instantly lost about 2 stone in weight, which is like 12 kg or something. And that was in about a month because following the surgery, I'd been put on a liquid diet and couldn't eat right. And when I started eating, it was agonizing and the whole thing was just pretty rough. And as someone who I think has a fair amount of hopefully fortitude through being an entrepreneur, it really started to affect me mentally as well. So the frustration of every time I had a kind of 3 good days, I think, okay, stupidly, I can now hustle again and I can push forward and I try working harder. And then instantly it would be like 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And I just couldn't do it. My body wouldn't let me do it. My mind wouldn't let me do it. And it would get to the point I'd be driving to work and punching the inside of my car with frustration, just not knowing what to do and thinking, why me, and just feeling like such a victim with it all, to be honest. I'd be in the kitchen at work and I'd just be making a cup of tea and then out of nowhere would pretty much start crying in the kitchen again at the sheer frustration and just not knowing what to do. And it was really scary at the time because it lasted so long. I started thinking, is this going to be the rest of my life? I thought through adopting bloody hustle culture and building a company, have I ruined the rest of my life? Am I going to be this sick forever? And that scared the hell out of me. That was absolutely terrifying. It was the most terrifying thing that had ever happened to me, to be honest. And again, the whole time, I feel like if it was a regular job, then I could go and have a sabbatical, move in with family, get looked after. But any entrepreneur watching this knows it doesn't stop. It can't stop, especially when you've worked so hard for something, especially when you have a team to look after. You have to keep it going. And so every bit of energy I had was not going into self-care and recovery, really. It was going into keeping the business going. Even beyond our team, I didn't want to let our suppliers down. I didn't want to let our partners down. Suddenly it had grown into this real thing. We had customers all over the world who appreciate us and look after us. All of these people, as much as I'm sure they'd tell me to go and get a rest at the time, I just felt like I could not let them down. Thankfully now I'm over 2 years on from that surgery and it's been a hell of a road, but through small steps, a lot of support and the amazing team here at Design Cuts, I now feel probably the healthiest I ever have done in my life. But it's had to be a real journey of looking after myself. I had to invest in a personal trainer to help get back on some of the weight. I had to slowly build up a diet and work with a dietitian. I had to work with a therapist because my head was so totally screwed up with this kind of workaholic thing going on that I had to just find some balance. So essentially I was taking any resources and time I had and just putting it actually towards self-care because I realized without me being able to function, none of the other stuff I wanted to happen could happen anyway. I couldn't just power through. I couldn't just hustle through and kind of outthink it. I had to actually get to the foundation of mental and physical health. And I really have learned there is nothing more vital. I've talked about this recently on my Instagram, saying essentially your business is you, but you are not your business. Your business, in this sense, is inextricably tied to you, which means that looking after you is looking after your business. However, on the flip side, you are not 100% your business. It is healthy to have hobbies and interests outside of running your business. And what I mean by that is, if you are broken and you're not working, your business is going to be broken and it's not going to work either. However, you can and should have a life outside of your business. So you should be able to have friends. You should be able to have a life and balance and a social life and all those great things and a relationship, which is totally separate from your business. But do realize your business is predicated on how you look after yourself. So if you're mentally with it and you're fit and healthy and motivated, that is all going to channel into your business. If you neglect that stuff in yourself, it ends very, very badly. As I've experienced, it has a real impact. I guess another lesson that I've learned is it's very dangerous trying to live someone else's life. Just because there's influencers that you look up to who motivate you, that's great. I've got so much time for the influencers and the big hustlers on the scene that I follow. I don't think they're bad people, but I do think that if I'm trying to live their life and match their work ethic, if that's not what I'm capable of, or it's not a good fit for me, or maybe I'm seeing the highlight reel and I'm trying to aspire to their absolute extremities all the time, that's incredibly dangerous. I know right now I could not go and work like The Rock. I couldn't have his absolute grinding Hollywood lifestyle, and nor would I want it. I also know I don't want to be like Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't want to be like Casey Neistat, Elon Musk, any of those people, because that isn't me. I think possibly a lot of it comes down to genetics. Truly, some people are built for it and others aren't. There's no shame in admitting that. I know whatever I did in the gym, I'm not going to be world's strongest man. I'm not going to be world's fastest man. I'm not going to be the greatest marathon runner of all time. And I have to live with the fact I'm probably not going to be the greatest hustler of all time. And I probably wouldn't want to be. And I think that's what people need to realize. They need to realize that just because they're looking up to someone who is possibly the best in the world at hustling, at working through, they might not be physically capable of doing that. They might not have the mental stability to pull that off, but it doesn't mean they can't hustle to some extent. It doesn't mean they can't work hard. You just got to do it with balance, and you've got to do it with self-awareness of what your own limitations are. You need to listen to your mind and your body and actually look out for you rather than just chasing someone else's dream. As I sit here now doing this brand new show for all of you, I'm filled with gratitude for what I've been through and where I'm at now. And I'm filled with gratitude for the people who surrounded me during those times. For my team, for my business partners, for my girlfriend, for my friends, for my family, everyone who kind of supported me through the hardest period of my life, I'm incredibly grateful for. And I feel like I've come out the other side with balance. I won't lie, there is always going to be a part of me that looks back to the limitless, adrenaline wave, hustle culture version of me, where if I could snap my fingers and go back and be able to sustain that, I probably would. As unhealthy as it is, I probably would, because it truly was the best feeling in the world. But a very close second is where I am now, where I feel like I can have real balance in my life. I can enjoy an amazing relationship and friendships. I can enjoy an atmosphere at work that is busy and productive and prolific and surrounded by talented people, but isn't relentlessly hustling and everyone getting burned out and miserable. And that balance is actually an amazing thing. And as the saying goes, you cannot sprint a marathon. That's something people told to me, one of the many red flags on the path to burnout and hustle imploding. And it's the one piece of advice that I would really love to pass on to you. You simply cannot sprint a marathon, and really you shouldn't want to. Ignore the social media hustle culture if it's going to take you down that path. Focus on sustainable progress. Focus on having fun along the way and building something meaningful, but also building a life around that. Thank you again for tuning in for this episode. I hope that my personal rant wasn't too graphic at points and that it does help give perspective. My biggest worry right now is that so many, particularly young entrepreneurs, are falling into the same trap that I did. Just because I kind of got onto the hustle thing perhaps earlier than some, it lets me see how many people now are in their first weeks or months or year of hustling. And they're so caught up in it, they can't see what is just around the corner. And that terrifies me. The stats show mental health problems are drastically on the rise. And I think particularly within the entrepreneurial community, the suicide rates, the mental health rates, they're staggeringly bad. And I really, really think this whole hustle culture phenomenon is going to lead to some very, very bad things happening over the next few years, where everyone currently swept up in it right now is going to crash very hard indeed. So if this message can reach just a few of them, or if you can share it with someone who needs to hear it, I really recommend that you do so, because I would hate to see people go through anything close to what I went through just a few years ago. Thanks again for tuning in. I truly appreciate your support and your time and your attention, and I will continue to be as honest as I can in this show to return that favor. Thanks, and I'll see you next time. You think, is it ever going to pay off? Am I going to be this kind of poor, struggling entrepreneur forever? I literally remember going down the local pub with my friends, and I was so poor I would have to go down the back of my dad's sofa and scramble around and find change down the back of the sofa just so I could try and contribute to the cab. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this show. I really appreciate that you've taken the time to consume it, to watch it, and I hope it's bringing you value. If it is, it would mean the world to me if you took just a moment to either subscribe, leave a comment, or engage with it in some way. I love when people reach out to me. I love responding to all the comments, and I love building this incredible community around this new show. So if you can do any of that, it would mean the world. Subscribe, comment below. And if you're listening on iTunes, be sure to leave a review. But once again, thank you. You're the absolute best, and I'll see you soon.